and do a walk down the hedgerow. A lot of it's been recently replanted from the power line construction last summer, and so all this stuff here was wiped away, and this is all new replantings of stuff. Some things that I grew, some things that I transplanted, and some things from the Conservation District tree sales, and then a few other plants that I ordered in. So up here, these are planted about 4 feet apart. As we get to the back where there's less maintenance and less interaction, those are planted more like 2 to 3 feet apart. It's kind of a double row for more density for establishment. So as we're getting here, this is the part of the hedgerow that was not destroyed. Hi, kitty. So this stuff all still looks good. This was planted in 2011. This is a nice mature hedgerow. Things are pretty much filled in. You know, it tends to be from 5 to 9 feet tall. Pretty good interaction of species. These were, I think, planted at about 6-foot centers originally. So yeah, there's a few remnants of this original hedgerow. As we get up here, that kind of ends. Here's one last little chunk. There's 9-bark just finishing its flowering there in the middle. Lilac to the edge of that. Got a couple of hazelnuts and the serviceberry. Serviceberry fruits are not quite ripe yet, but they're getting there. They will be in a week or two. They're just coloring up. Not a real heavy fruit set on this one. It's been dry here, and also we had very bad late frost that got a lot of things. So here's another area of major destruction. New power pole here. They replaced one that used to be behind me and put this one in a new location, so everything here used to all be solid hedgerow. And there used to be a big pear tree here, and they took that down. That was kind of the marker of the corner of the property. But as we get in here, you can see sort of the planting dynamic. And you can see it's kind of a double row. So within these double rows, they're about 4 feet apart, but going north to south, and this hedgerow runs north to south, they're only about 2 feet apart in a linear measurement. So I'll just kind of keep walking down here. This is a mixture of a lot of stuff. Species that have done the best here, like Nanking cherry, American hazelnut, 9-bark, red osier dogwood, some wild roses, serviceberry, and autumn olive. And there's one other one that I'm forgetting. Oh, nannyberry. Put a bunch of nannyberries in here because they did pretty well, and I like the taste of the fruit. They have pretty nice tasting fruit. So here, you know, these bushes were sort of half mowed down or driven over. That's why you see a lot of strange appearance with some of these. It's like half the bush is missing, like on this autumn olive. Some of these got pretty radically pruned back by me. And some things I thought would regrow, and they are kind of not regrowing. So it's sort of an experiment. But with this much density, I'm hoping that within a couple, 2-3 years, this will have regrown into something of a decent hedge. And that by planting things more densely like this, it'll be less watering and less maintenance, because in nature, plants like to be close to each other, and just less space for the weeds to fill in quickly. And they help each other out and shade each other, which is good to some extent. So yeah, it's kind of just a repeating pattern. I planted about 150 new plants into this hedgerow. I don't know how long the whole thing is. It's probably 800 or 900 feet long in total. But there's some large gaps, and there's some areas that had already been planted. Maybe it's not that long. Maybe it's 600 or 700. I can't recall exactly. But yeah, this is kind of what it's looking like in the middle of June 2020. Coming up to the end here, and where they put these power poles were generally pretty inconvenient locations for me. They kind of moved them, so the old one used to be I'll say where the one on the left is, and they added a second one farther into my property, which means that for them to drive through here, they've got to keep it open in the middle, but that's just a little bit too narrow for most trucks to probably go through comfortably. It's probably 12 or 14 feet between them. So they probably want to go around to one side or the other. So I've got to leave more of an area open than I would like to. So I didn't replant anything too close to these poles here. The last replantings are down here, which gives them a real generous road to drive through. But you can see, they'd kind of driven back and forth over this pretty badly, but there's some hazelnuts that have come back from my old hedgerow, and they're pretty resilient species. So that's what all this is hazelnut regrowth. I have not mowed anything this year. I haven't done any kind of path maintenance or mowing, just planting. I've got a lot of other projects going on with fixing up my grandma's house over in the neighborhood that we're going to be moving into. So it's just been trying to get things in the ground, get things established, and then work on other projects. So I'm not even sure if I'll get around to mowing this year. You can see that like here is kind of a path that I mowed last fall, but pretty soon you won't be able to see that anymore because the dewberries and the knapweed and the grasses will all grow back up. And then you can't tell now because it's been pretty dry, but there were some serious ruts in this road. I removed a lot of stuff that was kind of from here over, moved those out of the way of the construction. And now we'll kind of walk back here and show you this stuff again, so you can see a different view of it. And then over to the right hand side, they took out a nice little chunk of woods there, but you can still see that there's some good remnants of that, and it'll regrow. There's some quaking aspens, some pines, lots of oaks, sassafras, black cherry, wild hazelnuts. Actually, those have been here for at least 80 years. My grandma remembers those from when she was a little girl. So yeah, I'm keeping this middle drive open. And I don't know, technically the other side of these plantings, Welch's owns that up to a point. So I'm not sure, if I should do some mowing on that or just let it regrow to forest, because if it regrows to forest, they're going to want to come through and chop it or spray it down every so often, which I'd rather they didn't do. But if it's, I don't know, if it's mowed, then they probably wouldn't do that, or they wouldn't be as likely to, but who knows. On my side, I'm going to keep this driveway mowed at least once or twice a year so that it doesn't become a woody mess, and so that there's good vehicle access. And that, they've let me keep this hedgerow here. They could have technically mowed it all down if they wanted to be jerks about it, but the guy was somewhat reasonable to deal with, so I'm glad for that. But yeah, you can see how sparse some of the growth is here, like on this red osier dogwood and this 9-bark. Those were full looking bushes before, but they just got trampled and driven over so badly that they're kind of springing back up. And there are suckers in here. So this is a sucker of the wild pear tree that was in the corner, and it's sent suckers out, got 100 feet or more in every direction. So that's interesting. It's an interesting problem to have. It means I can graft some pear scions onto some of those if I want and see how they fare. They won't have great root systems because they're just suckers, but now that the mother tree is gone, they might live, so we could try and see. And then here I haven't mown anything, but you can see where that lighter colored grass is. That's a driveway. It seems like whatever mowing regimen I did, mowing once or twice a year, really seemed to favor little blue stem grass. That's all little blue stem in there, and it's almost to the exclusion of anything else. So that's interesting. So I have to be careful how I mow, because I don't really necessarily want to encourage a lot more little blue stem. It's not my favorite thing. We've already got tons of it on the site here, so I don't really need to have more of it. This main driveway, interestingly, this is not like that, and this gets mowed probably more often than that other part does. So I don't know what accounts for the difference there, but I will have to mow this drive at least once maybe twice this summer. I should do it soon. I haven't mowed anything here yet, except right near the front of the property because, you know, people like to have that mowed near the road. It looks better to people. They don't like to see tall grass by the road, so I kind of mowed in the front yard of the house I tore down, and then mowed, yeah, just the strip near the road basically, and then a little bit for access over to my garage here. But that's kind of what the hedgerow is looking like this time of year, this June 2020. The front of the garden here, this was all wiped out, so these are all replantings. And I probably should have planted a lot more densely to get things back up and running here, but this was all really compacted soil and just pretty much pure sand. You can see they dug down 20 feet deep, and you can see it's like a sandbox here. That's the soil and the subsoil here underneath a very little amount of topsoil. So I threw down seeds of various wildflower mixtures, prairie plant flowers, and I've transplanted a few things around, but I've got some woody perennials. So there's a type of wild peach over in that shadow. There's a couple of currants. That is a gumi, I believe. And I've got a kind of cultivated hawthorn, a regent serviceberry, and some other stuff. So this little jungle over here, that's has better soil than most of this site because it had loads of leaves dumped here for several years. And so this has got a pretty good stand of growth. There's a catalpa tree, a bunch of cup plants, some potatoes that I forgot to harvest last year that are regrowing, a little pawpaw. This is a grafted pawpaw here, and there's some things over there that got transplanted last year that never found their permanent homes yet. So yeah, I like the way this looks and feels a lot better than most of the site, which is just grassy bullshit stuff. But grasses seem to outcompete almost everything on the site in most cases, so that's just an unpleasant fact of life that I've had to learn to live with. The only things that seem to give grasses a real run for the money are monarda and oregano, and cup plant, no, not as much because it dies when it gets too dry. Sunchokes get eaten by the deer too badly, and they don't like drought either. So yeah, monarda and oregano are probably the two most competitive herbaceous plants that I've seen. But I've got, you know, more than I need of those, so I'm not eager to plant more of them out. But anyway, that's the hedgerow update for June.